Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you a question that will determine the course of your financial future. Where do you stand today, and more importantly, where are you willing to go? You see, most people spend their entire lives working for money. They wake up every morning, fight traffic, punch a clock, and trade their most precious asset, their time, for a paycheck that's already spent before it arrives. They call this security. They call this responsibility. They call this being an adult. But I'm here to tell you something different today. I'm here to tell you that there's a fundamental difference between working for money and having money work for you. Now, I want you to understand something right from the start. This isn't about getting rich quick. This isn't about some scheme or shortcut. This is about understanding a simple truth that the wealthy have known for generations. There are 4 different ways to generate income in this world, and the quadrant you choose to operate in will determine not just your income, but your lifestyle, your freedom, and your legacy. Let me paint you a picture. Imagine a simple diagram divided into 4 parts. On the left side, you have the employee and the self-employed. On the right side, you have the business owner and the investor. Most people, and I mean the vast majority, spend their entire lives on the left side of this quadrant, never realizing there's another way. They're stuck in what I call the time for money trap, and they don't even know they're trapped. The employee is someone who says, I'm looking for a safe, secure job with benefits. Now, there's nothing wrong with being an employee when you're starting out or learning skills. But here's the challenge. As an employee, you have the least control over your income and your time. You're building someone else's dream, someone else's business, someone else's fortune. You trade your hours for dollars, and when you run out of hours, you run out of dollars. It's that simple. The self-employed person says, if you want it done right, do it yourself. They're doctors, lawyers, consultants, small business owners who run everything themselves. They've escaped the employee trap, or so they think. But here's what they've really done. They've bought themselves a job. They're working harder than any employee ever worked. Sure, they make more money, but they can't take a vacation because the business stops when they stop. They are the business. And that's not freedom, my friends. That's just a different kind of prison. Now let's talk about the right side of the quadrant. This is where the game changes completely. The business owner builds systems and hires people to run those systems. They leverage the talents and time of others. They understand that true business isn't about working harder, it's about building something that works without you. When a business owner takes a vacation, their income doesn't just continue, it often increases because they've built something bigger than themselves. And then we have the investor. The investor makes money work for them. They don't trade time for money at all. Their money generates more money while they sleep, while they travel, while they spend time with their family. This is the ultimate form of financial freedom. Now here's what you need to understand, and this is crucial. Poor people and middle-class people work for money. The wealthy make money work for them. It's not about how much you make, it's about how you make it and what you do with it once you have it. Let me tell you something about human nature. We all want more. More money, more freedom, more security, but most people are trying to get more while staying in the same quadrant. They want a bigger paycheck as an employee. They want more clients as a self-employed professional. But they never change the fundamental structure of how they generate income. It's like trying to get different results while doing the same thing. Einstein called that insanity, and he was right. The journey from the left side of the quadrant to the right side isn't easy. It requires a fundamental shift in your thinking, your skills, and your habits. But let me tell you something. It's absolutely possible, and it's absolutely worth it. You see, each quadrant requires different skills and a different mindset. An employee needs to be a good follower, to show up on time, to do what they're told. These are valuable skills, but they won't make you wealthy. A self-employed person needs to be competent at their craft, whether that's law, medicine, plumbing, or consulting. Again, valuable, but not the skills of wealth. A business owner needs to understand systems, leadership, and delegation. They need to know how to find good people and how to inspire them to build something together. They need to understand marketing, sales, finance, and operations. Not necessarily how to do all these things themselves, but how to build systems and teams that excel in each area. An investor needs to understand money itself. They need to know the difference between assets and liabilities. They need to understand risk and return, cash flow and capital gains, passive income and earned income. They need financial literacy that, frankly, our schools never teach us. And that brings me to a critical point. Our educational system prepares us beautifully for the left side of the quadrant. We go to school to learn to be good employees or good self-employed professionals. We're taught to get good grades, get a good job, work hard, and save money. But nobody teaches us how to build businesses or invest for cash flow. Nobody teaches us the skills of the right side of the quadrant. This is why 95% of people retire broke or dependent on the government or their families. They spent their whole lives on the left side, never learning that there was another way. They believed that hard work alone would make them rich. But I'm here to tell you, hard work alone has never made anyone wealthy. Smart work, leveraged work, systems that work while you sleep, that's what creates wealth. Now let me talk about the transition, because this is where most people get stuck. They know they want to move from the left side to the right side, but they don't know how. They're afraid, they're uncertain, they're paralyzed by the fear of failure or the fear of losing what little security they have. Here's what I want you to understand. The transition doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't have to be all or nothing. You can start building your right side income while you're still earning your left side income. In fact, that's exactly what you should do. Use the security of your employee income to invest in your education, to build your business, to make your first investments. Don't quit your job on Monday and expect to be a successful business owner by Friday. That's not wisdom, that's foolishness. The wealthy think long term. They plant trees under whose shade they may never sit. They make decisions today that will pay off 5, 10, 20 years from now. The poor and middle class think short term. They want immediate gratification. They want the paycheck this Friday. They're not willing to sacrifice today for a better tomorrow. Let me ask you something. What would your life look like if you spent the next 5 years deliberately, intentionally building income from the right side of the quadrant? What if you invested in your financial education? What if you started a part-time business and learned the skills of entrepreneurship? What if you took a portion of every paycheck and invested it in assets that produce cash flow? 5 years are going to pass whether you do this or not. The question is, where will you be in 5 years? Still trading time for money, still living paycheck to paycheck, still dependent on an employer who could let you go at any moment? Or will you have built streams of income that flow whether you show up or not? Now, I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, but I don't have any money to invest. I can barely make ends meet now. And I understand that. I really do. But here's what I've learned over the years. Being broke is temporary. Being poor is a mindset. You can be broke and still think rich. You can be broke and still invest in your education, still learn new skills, still build relationships with people who are where you want to be. The question isn't whether you have money right now. The question is, are you investing in yourself? Are you reading books about business and investing? Are you attending seminars? Are you surrounding yourself with people who are financially successful? Are you studying how money really works? Because I promise you this, invest in yourself first and the money will follow. You see, the difference between the left side and the right side of the quadrant isn't just about money, it's about control. On the left side, you have almost no control. You can be downsized, replaced, automated out of existence. On the right side, you have tremendous control. You decide when to work, how to work, whom to work with. You control your income instead of your income controlling you. And it's about leverage. On the left side, you are the leverage. Someone else is using your time and talents to build their wealth. On the right side, you create leverage. You use systems, you use other people's time, you use money itself to create more money. This is how the rich get richer, not because they work harder, but because they've learned how to leverage. Let me tell you about assets and liabilities, because this is fundamental to understanding the investor quadrant. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. It sounds simple, but most people don't understand this. They think their house is an asset. But if you're making payments on it every month, if it's costing you money, it's not an asset, it's a liability. The bank owns an asset, you own a liability. A true asset produces income. Rental properties that generate positive cash flow, that's an asset. Businesses that generate profit, that's an asset. Stocks that pay dividends, bonds that pay interest, intellectual property that generates royalties, these are assets. And here's the secret of the wealthy. They accumulate assets and they use the income from those assets to buy more assets. They let their money multiply. The poor and middle class work hard for money and then use that money to buy liabilities. They buy bigger houses they can't afford, fancy cars that depreciate the moment they drive them off the lot, boats, jewelry, all things that cost money to maintain. And then they wonder why they're working harder and harder but never getting ahead. The path from employee to investor is really the path from buying liabilities to acquiring assets. It's the path from consuming to producing. It's the path from instant gratification to delayed gratification. And yes, it requires sacrifice. It requires discipline. It requires you to do today what others won't, so you can live tomorrow like others can't. Now let's talk about the mindset shift that has to happen, because moving from the left side of the quadrant to the right side isn't just about learning new skills. It's about fundamentally changing how you think about money, work, and success. Employees and self-employed people ask, how can I do this myself? How can I work harder? Business owners and investors ask, how can I get this done? Who can help me? What system can I create? Do you see the difference? One is about personal effort. The other is about leverage and systems. Employees think in terms of security and steady paychecks. Investors think in terms of opportunities and cash flow. Employees want certainty. Investors understand that with proper education and skill, they can create their own certainty by knowing how to make money in any market, in any economy. Employees say, I can't afford it. Investors ask, how can I afford it? One statement shuts down your brain. The other forces forces you to think, to be creative, to find solutions. Your questions determine your destiny. If you ask poor questions, you'll get poor answers. If you ask rich questions, you'll get rich answers. And here's something else about mindset. The left side of the quadrant hates risk and seeks security. The right side understands that the only real security comes from knowing how to create value and generate income. They know that there is no security in a job. Companies downsize. Industries change. Technology replaces workers. The only real security is your ability to produce value and generate income. Let me share something with you about financial education, because this is the foundation of everything I'm talking about. Our schools teach us to be employees. They teach us to memorize facts, follow instructions, and pass tests. But they don't teach us how money works. They don't teach us about cash flow, leverage, taxes, corporations, investing, or entrepreneurship. Why? Because the people who designed our educational system needed employees for their factories and businesses. They didn't need entrepreneurs or investors. So if you want to move to the right side of the quadrant, you must educate yourself. You must become a student of money, read books on investing, on business, on entrepreneurship, study successful people, learn from their mistakes and their successes, attend seminars, find mentors, invest in courses and programs that teach you the skills of the right side. And here's the thing about financial education. It's not expensive, it's priceless. You can spend tens of thousands of dollars on a college degree that trains you to be an employee, or you can spend a fraction of that on your financial education and learn how to be a business owner or investor. Which is the better investment? I spent years investing in my education about business and money. I made mistakes, lots of them. I lost money, I failed, but every failure taught me something. Every mistake made me smarter. And gradually, over time, I learned how the game of money really works. And once you understand the rules of the game, you can win the game. Now, let's talk specifically about the investor quadrant, because this is the ultimate goal. This is where true financial freedom lives. An investor doesn't need to work because their assets generate enough income to cover their expenses and then some. They have achieved what Robert Kiyosaki calls financial freedom, the point where your passive income exceeds your expenses. But here's what you need to understand. There are different kinds of investors, and they have different levels of sophistication and different levels of return. The average person invests in mutual funds and hopes for the best. They hand their money over to strangers and pray it grows. They have no control, no understanding, no real knowledge of what's being done with their money. This is the lowest level of investing. The sophisticated investor understands that investing is not about hoping and praying. It's about knowledge, strategy, and control. They invest in things they understand. They look for cash flow, not just capital gains. They understand the tax laws and use them to their advantage. They understand risk and how to mitigate it. They don't follow the crowd. They look for opportunities the crowd hasn't discovered yet. Real investors make money in any market, up, down, or sideways. They understand that there are always opportunities if you know where to look and how to evaluate them. When everyone else is panicking and selling, sophisticated investors are buying at discount prices. When everyone else is greedy and buying, sophisticated investors are selling. They go against the crowd because the crowd is usually wrong. And here's something critical about becoming an investor. You must understand the difference between investing for capital gains and investing for cash flow. Most people invest hoping their stock or property will go up in value, capital gains. But the wealthy invest primarily for cash flow, the money that flows into their pocket every month from dividends, interest, or rental income. Why? Because cash flow is predictable, sustainable, and doesn't require you to sell your asset to realize the gain. Think about it this way. If you own a property that pays you $2,000 a month in positive cash flow after all expenses, you have an asset that's putting money in your pocket every single month. Whether the property value goes up or down doesn't matter to your monthly income. That's the power of cash flow investing. The same is true with businesses. A business that generates profit month after month, year after year, is worth far more than a business that's just growing in size but consuming cash. Profit is king, cash flow is king. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash flow is reality. Now, I want to address something that stops a lot of people from making the transition to the right side of the quadrant, the fear of failure. We live in a society that punishes failure, that mocks those who try and don't succeed. In school, if you fail, you get an F and you're labeled a failure. So people become terrified of making mistakes. But here's what successful entrepreneurs and investors know. Failure is part of the learning process. You don't learn to ride a bicycle by reading about it or watching videos. You get on the bike, you fall, you get up, you fall again, and eventually you learn to balance and ride. Business and investing are the same way. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to lose money. You're going to fail at times. But if you learn from every failure, if you let every mistake make you smarter, then failure becomes your teacher. The people who never fail are the people who never try. They're so afraid of making mistakes that they do nothing. And doing nothing is the biggest failure of all because it guarantees you'll never succeed. So I'm telling you right now, be willing to fail. Be willing to look foolish. Be willing to make mistakes. Because on the other side of those failures is the success you're looking for. Let me talk to you about the tax advantages of the right side of the quadrant, because this is significant and most people don't understand it. Employees pay the highest percentage of their income in taxes. They earn money, the government takes its cut before they ever see it, and then they live on what's left. They have almost no legal tax deductions. They are, as some have said, sitting ducks for the tax collector. Self-employed people can deduct some business expenses, but they still pay high taxes, and they pay self-employment tax on top of income tax. The government gets its money first, and they live on the rest. But business owners and investors operate in a different tax system. They earn money, they pay their expenses, and then they pay taxes on what's left. They have numerous legal deductions. They can write off business expenses, depreciation, home offices, vehicles, travel, and much more. The tax code is actually written to favor business owners and investors because the government wants to encourage business creation and investment. Let me say that again because it's important. The tax code favors business owners and investors. The government wants you to create jobs, to build businesses, to invest in real estate and other assets. So they give you tax incentives to do so. But employees get no such incentives. Why? Because employees don't create jobs, they fill them, they don't build businesses, they work in them. So if you want to keep more of what you earn, if you want to build wealth faster, you must understand the tax advantages of operating on the right side of the quadrant. I'm not talking about cheating or doing anything illegal. I'm talking about using the tax code the way it was designed to be used. The wealthy don't pay less in taxes because they're cheating. They pay less because they're using the rules that are available to everyone but that most people don't know about or don't take advantage of. Now let's discuss the concept of passive income versus active income, because this is the key to financial freedom. Active income is what you earn from working. Your salary, your fees, your commissions. When you stop working, the income stops. Passive income is what you earn from your assets. Rental income, dividends, royalties, business profits from a business you don't actively run. This income continues whether you work or not. The goal is to build enough passive income to cover your living expenses. Once your passive income exceeds your expenses, you are financially free. You can work if you want to, but you don't have to. You have choices. You have freedom. You have time to spend with your family, to travel, to pursue your passions, to make a difference in the world. Most people never achieve this because they never build passive income. They work their entire lives for active income. And when they can no longer work, they have nothing but a small pension or social security, if that even still exists when they retire. They're dependent on the government or their children. That's not freedom, that's dependence. But imagine waking up every morning knowing that whether you go to work or not, your income is still flowing in. Imagine knowing that you could take a month off or a year off and your lifestyle wouldn't change because your assets are working for you. That's the power of passive income. That's the goal of the investor quadrant. And here's the beautiful thing. Once you understand how to create passive income, you can never be poor again. You might be temporarily broke if you make a bad investment or if there's an economic downturn, but you're never poor because you have the knowledge and skills to create income. That knowledge is an asset that can never be taken from you. Let me talk about the importance of starting where you are with what you have. I meet so many people who say they want to move to the right side of the quadrant, but they're waiting. They're waiting for the perfect opportunity, the perfect amount of money, the perfect timing, the perfect economy. But here's the truth. There is no perfect time. The perfect time is now. The perfect amount is whatever you have. The perfect opportunity is the one right in front of you that you're willing to seize. You don't need a lot of money to start. You need a lot of desire. You need a commitment to learning. You need the willingness to start small and grow. Every wealthy person I know started somewhere. They started with little or nothing, but they started. They took action. They made mistakes and learned. They failed and got back up. They persisted when others quit. You can start by investing in your education. That costs very little. You can read books from the library for free. You can attend free seminars. You can find mentors who are willing to share their knowledge. You can start a small side business with almost no money. You can save your first $100 or $1,000 and make your first investment. The point is to start, because wealth is built over time through consistent action, not through one big score. And speaking of time, let me tell you about the power of compound growth. Einstein allegedly called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. When you invest money and it earns a return, and then you reinvest that return so it also earns a return, your money grows exponentially over time. A small amount invested consistently over many years becomes a large amount. But here's what most people don't understand. Compounding works with knowledge and skills too. Every book you read makes the next book more valuable because you have more context. Every investment you make teaches you something that makes your next investment smarter. Every business experience adds to your wisdom and capability. If you commit to continuous learning and improvement, you compound your value and your ability to generate income. The difference between where you are now and where you want to be is the knowledge, skills, and habits you need to develop. And the great news is that knowledge, skills, and habits can all be learned. You're not stuck where you are. You can change. You can grow. You can transform yourself from an employee mindset to an investor mindset. But it requires a decision. It requires commitment. You must decide that you're willing to do whatever it takes, learn whatever you need to learn, and persist for however long it takes. Success is not for the casual. It's not for those who try half-heartedly for a few months and then quit when it gets hard. Success is for those who commit fully and persist until they achieve their goal. Now let me address something important, the value of working with others. No one builds wealth alone. The wealthy understand the power of teams, partnerships, advisors, and mentors. They surround themselves with people who are smarter than they are in specific areas. They hire accountants who understand tax law. They work with attorneys who protect their assets. They partner with people who have complementary skills. They learn from mentors who have already achieved what they want to achieve. The poor and middle class think they have to do everything themselves. They can't afford to hire help, so they struggle alone. But here's the paradox. You can't afford not to hire help. A good accountant can save you more in taxes than they cost. A good attorney can protect you from lawsuits that could wipe you out. A good mentor can help you avoid costly mistakes and accelerate your learning. A good partner can bring skills or resources that complement your own and help you achieve things you never could alone. Your network is your net worth. The people you associate with, the people you learn from, the people you do business with, these relationships are often more valuable than money itself. Because the right relationship can lead to the right opportunity, the right investment, the right partnership that changes everything. So, invest in relationships. Be someone people want to do business with. Be honest, be reliable, be valuable to others. Give before you expect to receive. Help others succeed, and success will come back to you multiplied. This is not just philosophy. This is practical wisdom that the wealthy live by. Let me talk about the stages of becoming an investor, because this is a journey, not a destination. First, you must become financially literate. You must understand the language of money, the basics of accounting, the difference between assets and liabilities, how to read financial statements. This is your foundation. Second, you must learn to control your cash flow. You must spend less than you earn and use the difference to acquire assets. This requires discipline, budgeting, and delayed gratification. Most people never master this step, which is why they never build wealth no matter how much they earn. Third, you must invest in your financial education and in building your investment skills. Learn about different types of investments, real estate, businesses, stocks, bonds, commodities. Learn the pros and cons of each. Learn how to evaluate opportunities and assess risk. This takes time, but it's time well invested. Fourth, you start investing. You start small. You make mistakes. You learn. You adjust. You get better. Over time, your investments grow, your skills improve, your confidence increases. You begin to see returns. You reinvest those returns. Your wealth compounds. Fifth, you achieve cash flow financial independence, the point where your passive income covers your living expenses. You are now free to work or not work as you choose. This is the goal most people never reach, but it's absolutely achievable if you follow the path. And finally, sixth, you achieve true wealth, the point where your assets generate far more income than you need. You now have the ability to live any lifestyle you choose, to give generously, to make a real difference in the world. You have achieved financial freedom and abundance. This journey might take 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or more. But every year you're on this path, you're better off than if you'd stayed on the left side of the quadrant. Every year your assets grow, your income increases, your freedom expands, and one day you look back and realize you've become the person you once only dreamed of being. Now, I want to address the mindset of scarcity versus abundance, because this determines whether you can make this transition or not. Most people operate from a scarcity mindset. They believe there's not enough to go around. They believe that if someone else wins, they must lose. They believe opportunities are limited. They believe wealth is something you have to take from others. But the wealthy operate from an abundance mindset. They believe there's more than enough for everyone. They believe that creating value for others is how you create wealth for yourself. They believe opportunities are unlimited for those who are prepared and looking. They believe wealth is something you create, not something you take. This mindset shift is crucial. If you believe there's not enough, you'll never take the risks necessary to succeed. You'll hoard what little you have. You'll be afraid to invest, afraid to spend money on education, afraid to start a business. But if you believe there's abundance, you'll invest in yourself, you'll look for opportunities, you'll create value, and you'll prosper. Abundance isn't about ignoring reality or being naive. It's about understanding that in a free economy, wealth is created, not fixed. When someone builds a business that serves people well, they create wealth. Wealth that didn't exist before. When someone invests in an asset that produces income, they create wealth. Wealth creation is not a zero-sum game. We can all win together. Let me tell you about the importance of financial goals, because what gets measured gets managed, and what gets managed gets achieved. You must know where you're going financially. How much passive income do you need to be financially free? What assets do you need to acquire to generate that income? How much do you need to invest each month or year to acquire those assets? What rate of return do you need? These aren't just numbers on paper. These are your roadmap to freedom. Write them down. Review them regularly. Track your progress. Celebrate your wins, even the small ones. Learn from your setbacks. Adjust your strategy as needed, but keep moving forward toward your goals. And make your goals specific and time-bound. Not I want to be rich someday. That's a wish, not a goal. But I will build $5,000 per month in passive income within 5 years by investing in rental real estate. That's a goal. It's specific, measurable, and time-bound. You can create a plan to achieve it. You can track your progress. You can know when you've succeeded. The discipline of setting goals, making plans, and tracking progress is what separates those who succeed from those who just dream. Dreams are important. They give you direction and motivation. But dreams without plans are just fantasies. Plans without action are just intentions. You need all three: dreams to inspire you, plans to guide you, and action to move you forward. Now let me address something that holds many people back: the opinions of others. When you decide to move from the left side of the quadrant to the right side, when you decide to start a business or become an investor, you're going to encounter resistance. Your friends might think you're crazy. Your family might tell you you're taking too much risk. Your coworkers might mock you or say it will never work. Here's what you need to understand. Most people give advice based on their own fears and limitations, not on your potential and possibilities. They're not trying to hurt you. They're trying to protect you from what they fear. But their fears are not your reality. Their limitations are not your limitations. Listen to advice from people who have achieved what you want to achieve. Learn from people who are where you want to be. But don't let people who are stuck on the left side of the quadrant talk you out of moving to the right side. They don't understand what you're trying to do because they've never done it themselves. Surround yourself with people who support your growth, who believe in your potential, who encourage your dreams. Distance yourself from negative people, naysayers, and dream killers. This isn't about being arrogant or thinking you're better than others. It's about protecting your mindset and your momentum, because the path you're on requires courage, persistence, and belief. And those things are hard to maintain if you're constantly surrounded by people who don't believe it's possible. Let me share with you the importance of taking calculated risks. Notice I said calculated risks, not reckless gambling. There's a huge difference. Gambling is betting money on something you don't understand and can't control, hoping to get lucky. Calculated risk is investing in something you've studied, understand well, and have a plan for, knowing that while there's risk, you've done everything reasonable to minimize it and maximize your chances of success. The left side of the quadrant avoids all risk and seeks security. But in trying to avoid risk, they take on the biggest risk of all: the risk of never achieving financial freedom, the risk of working their whole lives and ending up broke, the risk of being at the mercy of employers, the economy, and the government. The right side of the quadrant understands that the only way to grow is to take intelligent risks. They educate themselves so they can assess risk accurately. They start small so if they fail, it doesn't wipe them out. They diversify so they're not dependent on any one investment or income stream. They learn from every outcome, success or failure. Risk is not something to be avoided, it's something to be managed. The question is not, how can I avoid all risk? The question is, how can I get educated enough to take intelligent risks that have a high probability of producing the results I want? That's the mindset of the wealthy. And here's something else about risk. What seems risky to one person seems safe to another, and vice versa. To an employee, starting a business seems incredibly risky. To a successful entrepreneur, relying on a single employer for all your income seems incredibly risky. To someone with no financial education, investing in real estate seems risky. To a sophisticated real estate investor, not investing in real estate seems risky. Your level of risk is inversely proportional to your level of knowledge and skill. The more you know, the less risky something becomes. This is why education is so important. Education decreases risk while increasing opportunity. Now let's talk about the power of focus and specialization. When you're starting out on the right side of the quadrant, you might be tempted to try everything, start multiple businesses, invest in every type of asset, chase every opportunity. But this is a mistake. The wealthy understand the power of focus. They become expert in one or two areas before they expand. Maybe you focus on a particular type of business or a particular niche market. Maybe you specialize in one type of investment, residential real estate or dividend-paying stocks, or building online businesses. Whatever you choose, go deep before you go wide. Become truly knowledgeable and skilled in that area. Build a track record of success. Then, once you've mastered that area and built consistent income from it, you can diversify into other areas. This focus does two things. First, it increases your chances of success because you're not spreading yourself too thin. Second, it accelerates your learning because you're concentrating your efforts and attention on mastering one thing rather than dabbling in many things. Remember, the goal is not to try everything. The goal is to find what works for you and do more of it. Find your strengths, your interests, your advantages, and build on those. Don't waste time trying to fix your weaknesses or chase opportunities that don't align with your skills and passions. Focus on what you do best and what you enjoy most, and you'll not only be more successful, you'll be happier along the way. As we move toward the end of our time together, I want to leave you with this. The cash flow quadrant is not just a financial concept, it's a life concept. It's about freedom, choice, and control over your destiny. It's about deciding that you will not spend your entire life working for money, but instead, you will make money work for you. It's about refusing to accept the limits that society, your family, or your circumstances have tried to place on you. You have within you right now everything you need to begin this journey. You have a brain that can learn. You have time that you can invest wisely. You have the ability to make decisions and take action. You have access to more information and opportunity than any generation in human history. What you do with these resources is up to you. The path from employee to investor is not easy, but it is simple. Learn the skills of the right side of the quadrant. Start building assets that produce passive income. Control your expenses and invest the difference. Surround yourself with successful people. Take intelligent risks. Learn from every outcome. Persist until you succeed, and never ever give up on your dreams of financial freedom. 5 years from now, you will arrive. The question is, where? Will you arrive at the same place you are today, still trading time for money, still living paycheck to paycheck? Or will you arrive at a place of growing assets, increasing passive income, and expanding freedom? The choice is yours, and the time to make that choice is now. You see, time is your most precious asset. And it's the only asset you can never get back once it's spent. Every day you stay on the left side of the quadrant is a day you could have been building your future on the right side. Every month you spend all your money on liabilities is a month you could have been acquiring assets. Every year you wait to start is a year of compound growth you've lost forever. The wealthy understand this. That's why they start early. That's why they persist. That's why they keep learning and growing no matter how old they are or how successful they become. Because they know that financial freedom isn't a destination you reach and then stop. It's a journey of continuous growth, learning, and expansion. And let me tell you this, the journey itself is rewarding. Yes, the destination of financial freedom is wonderful, but the person you become on the journey is even more valuable than the money you make. You develop confidence, skills, wisdom, resilience, and character. You become someone who creates value, solves problems, and makes a difference. You become someone who doesn't just take from the world, but gives back to it. So I challenge you today, make a decision. Decide that you will not settle for a life of financial mediocrity. Decide that you will invest in your education about money, business, and investing. Decide that you will start even if you start small. Decide that you will persist even when it's hard. Decide that you will become a person who operates on the right side of the quadrant, a person who builds assets, generates passive income, and achieves true financial freedom. Your life will not change until you change. Your income will not increase until you increase your value. Your future will not be different unless you make different choices today. So make those choices. Take that first step. Begin the journey from employee to investor, from working for money to having money work for you. Begin today the wealth path that the rich have walked before you, and that is available to anyone who has the courage to step onto it. The cash flow quadrant is not just about money. It's about life. It's about freedom. It's about creating the life you truly want to live rather than settling for the life circumstances have handed you. And that journey begins now with a single decision. The decision to change, to grow, to learn, and to become more than you currently are. Make that decision today, and I promise you, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, you will look back and thank yourself for having the courage to begin. Thank you.